Okay, we're live. We're going to let it breathe just for a moment here. Got to bring on Facebook, and then we're going to get things rocking. I'll get things rocking. Pat will get things rolling. How's that sound? Welcome in, everybody. It is the Frozen Rope Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me is the deputy editor of the Frozen Rope, Patrick Byrnes. Pat, here we are a week later, and we're staying consistent with the show. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I'm really looking forward to what it's going to be like when we actually have meaningful Jazz news and happenings and games and all this in just a couple of months' time. But till then, we're kind of treading our water. We're talking about the stories of the week. And first things first, dude, what did you make? I mean, we've got a main topic we want to get to tonight, breaking down the Jazz rookie class, how they fit, path to playing, etc. But really the news of this cycle, the last 24 hours, is Walker Kessler getting 5 minutes of playing time, dude. What did you make of it?
That was good. It's good that he's on the team. I don't think the Jazz front office is complaining. The less playing time, the less risk there is for injury.
That's right.
But I think he's getting some good experience, and it's going to come down to matchups. You got Steve Kerr, who's the head coach for the USA team. If you look at the Golden State Warriors, he doesn't really run a true center. He likes to spread it out, so I think Walker Kessler is basically on the team in case, there's just a matchup issue where they're going to need Kessler, or they could, and there might be come to a time where he sits, and then there might be a game where he gets 25 minutes because of the matchups. So we'll see how it plays out, but it was fun to see him on the court, for sure.
Hey, shout out everybody who's with us live. Car Wash channel on YouTube, dropping in a hello right back at you. As you can see here on the ticker below, Pat and myself on the screen, we want your questions. We want your comments like this from Lisa. So keep them coming. That's why we do these as a live stream. All right, podcast. She says, hi, what doesn't Steve Kerr do? Yeah, exactly. He's a man, Pat, of many talents, old Steve Kerr.
Yeah.
And maybe it's dates. I date myself a little bit here, but I can still remember him as a player, dude, from the 90s, and like the 3-point shooter that he was, and his role on those Bulls teams. And man, it makes me realize I am getting a little bit long in the tooth myself. I'm like one of those gray beards that crossed the wrong side of 30, in the NBA.
Yeah, when I think of Steve Kerr, I think of Arizona, University of Arizona. He was a pretty good college player, back in the day. He was a household name before he became an NBA player at Arizona. So, yeah. But, yeah, going back to Kessler, it could be Kessler really doesn't fit his style. So we'll see how it plays out.
Car Wash says, let's go Jazz. Let's win the 2023 NBA Finals this season. Let's get that NBA title. Well, let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts, Pat, of how that might possibly become at least plausible. First things first, the Jazz roster has changed quite a bit since the season ended, not just through the trades and different veteran acquisitions, but the 3 rookies, right? The Jazz ended up holding on to their 3 first-round picks. Taylor Hendricks. We got the standout Keyonte George, who everybody got really psyched about after seeing him tear it up in Summer League before he kind of got banged up, and they kiboshed that. And Bryce Sensabaugh. And I wanted to, on tonight's show, go through each one of these guys and talk a little bit about, based on the roster math as it's currently constructed in Utah, each guy's kind of path to playing time in 2023-24. So first things first, I know a lot of people are most interested in talking about Keyonte just because we got to see him and he's excited everybody, but we can't sleep on the number 9 overall pick, Taylor Hendricks. So first things first, what's your outlook for him, and how do you see his path to actual meaningful playing time?
At the beginning of the year, it's going to be rough, I think. I actually went back and looked. Not that I didn't kind of know the answer before I wouldn't look, but I took a peek at, Kessler's minutes the first couple months last year and Abaji's minutes the first couple of months last year, just to see if I can, see. Will Hardy doesn't have, as a head coach, he only has 1 year. We only have 1 year to go off of as far as, track history of playing rookies. But it was pretty rough for those guys in the beginning. I think Kessler, even being the first center off of the bench. He was only getting about 15 minutes a game. Abaji got to a point where 1 month he only got 6 minutes a game, and then they brought him down to the G League, and then Linux injury happened. That opened up an opportunity for Kessler to start, and he never looked back. And then after that trade at the deadline, Abaji got more minutes, but I think Hendricks, I wouldn't be shocked if Hendricks spent some time in the G League. I really wouldn't. I mean, they've got, the backup center from Turkey that they picked up, that's going to back up, you can be the backup center. I'm backing up Kessler. And then you got, Olynyk that's backing up, John Collins. So really he's, as far as your front court, he's the fifth guy. And your fifth guy, and you're not going to see much time. So he's either got an injury's got to happen, or Olynyk's got to be traded. And as far as the whole Olynyk thing, Olynyk could be on the roster. He could be on the roster for a long time because he's got that salary, that big salary that the Jazz need in case they want to go all in at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to move Olynyk just to get Hendricks minutes. I think Olynyk's kind of that chess piece that's going to help them get that player, if an opportunity presents itself, because they need the salary to match it back. So, for a big Taylor Hendricks fan, it might take a minute, but he's definitely going to see the court. I think after the trade deadline or maybe halfway through the season, you're looking over 20 minutes a game. But in the beginning, I don't think there's really a path for minutes for him. Like I said, he might spend some time in the G League.
It's kind of crazy how things can shake out, though. Like the story for players, regardless of sport. I mean, even this time last year, no one was really anticipating. And when I say no one, I mean Jazz fans. All right. Really anticipating Walker Kessler becoming the force that he did, right, as a rookie. And like you said, it took a little bit of time as the Jazz kind of marched through the season and, roster roles resolved and et cetera. But it's crazy how quickly things can change in the span of a season. And so right now, I agree with you that Taylor Hendricks, he's going to see the court at some point this year. It just kind of depends on how some of these other extraneous outside influence, outside meaning relative to what the factors Taylor himself can control. So how some of these factors resolve. But Keyonte, I want to talk about Keyonte because this is a guy who's actually garnering like some being touted as a more than plausible rookie of the year sleeper by different NBA insiders. What's your outlook for Keyonte George seeing the court this year?
It's a little bit of the same as Hendricks, maybe a little bit better. Like now that we're removed, had some time to get ourselves removed from that hype, that great, summer league that he have, reality sets in. You're still, you got Horton Tucker, you got Dunn, you got Clarkson, you got Sexton, you got guys that have a proven track history. You got Abaji. They're all fighting for minutes, and none of those guys have done anything to really deserve to, be taken out of the rotation. They've all like earned their spot. And I just don't see Hardy, throwing a 19-year-old rookie in there unless he can like pull like a Donovan Mitchell where, back in 2017, Donovan Mitchell forced Utah's hand. He was so much better than Rodney Hood. Like they didn't have a chance they didn't have a choice but to play Mitchell. And unless Keyonte George can show that he's the clear choice, the more I think about it, I would be shocked if he's like the day one starter. And then when I go through and think, okay, so you can play over this guy, over this guy, over this guy, and you look at what Hardy, what he did last year as far as the rookies, how they had to earn their way on the court, I think the beginning of the year could be a little bit rough for Keyonte too. As much as we want to see him, especially after the summer league, I just think that he might be the odd man out. I just can't see them taking Horton Tucker out of the rotation or Dunn out of the rotation. It's just the path of least resistance as far as the locker room goes. As far as having a controlled locker room, people not being ticked off as far as the pecking order. I think Keyonte has to wait a little bit. He has to wait for a couple dominoes to fall or an injury to happen before he steps in and gets like starter type minutes.
That's the probability. I would agree with you, but it's like you brought up, rewinding it to the beginning of the Donovan era in Utah. Mm-hmm. He couldn't be denied, and
true.
it remains to be seen whether his Keyonte's summer league performance ends up taking shape in a similar vein of like can't be denied. But I'll tell you what can't be denied. One aspect so far is his 28.3 points per game that he averaged. I get it. In the summer league, it was a small sample size before the Jazz played it safe and pulled him off the court because of that injury. But 28.3 points, I get it. Summer league, let's not go breaking our necks, jumping to conclusions. But that's a pretty optimistic, omen, harbinger for the future. And I got to imagine, Pat, that it definitely more than caught the shot callers at Jazz HQ's attention.
Yeah, I mean, there is that path that he can take as far as he's the obvious choice. He's just so much better than the other players. But I'm just kind of thinking from the point of view, these other players are pretty good. And all things being equal, if all things are equal, I think they're going to, as far as the pecking order goes, I think they're going to give it to the veterans. And I could be wrong. Like I say, I mean, it's actually fun to debate it.
Sure.
Honestly, you could ask 5 people. And I've listened to, all of the, Andy Larson, Sarah Todd, Tony Jones, and their opinions on it.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have different opinions. Like they all think that someone else should be the starter, So like it's really up in the air. And what it's really going to come down to is what happens in the scrimmages. And every time I think about that, I think about Keyonte George trying to guard Taylor Horton Tucker, who's got him by like 50 pounds. Like how hard that is to guard someone that outweighs you by 50 pounds. Like in practice, I think
what's the wingspan discrepancy between those two?
I'm not sure. I know Taylor Horton Tucker's 7'1". I'm not sure what Keyonte George. I know he's 6'6".
I'm gonna Google it real quick while we're chatting.
But yeah, I just like man, it is hard to guard someone when they outweigh you by 50 pounds. But when it comes to Horton Tucker, his Achilles heel is his shooting. And if he doesn't get to the point to where he's shooting, in the 3-pointers, 33, 34%, he's not going to end up being the starter. He's got to get that 3-point shot down. And if he does, man, I think he could be the starter.
6.5, by the way, 6'1". So Horton, THT 7'1", Keyonte 6'5" wingspan. As Jared points out, though, like you're talking about, this consistency as a shooter. Keyonte shot under 38% at Baylor. Wouldn't be shocked, says Jared, if he struggled a bit right out of the gate. So that is something to keep an eye on as he begins his pro career.
Yeah, we'll see, and it's not so much the wingspan that like I think Keyonte George is gonna struggle with against like guarding like a guy like Horton Tucker in practice. I think it's just the weight. When you got somebody by 50 pounds and you're as skilled as these guys are, like Horton Tucker is going to be able to do whatever he wants in the paint, with George. But then again, when Horton Tucker is guarding George, George has some, he's got some strengths too that he can take advantage of. But I don't know. I would love to watch practice. I would love to see the scrimmage where they're guarding each other. Because these guys, man, I'm telling you, these scrimmages, these guys are playing for their jobs.
They're scrapping.
They're not going to be like your normal scrimmages. They'd be for sure some fun stuff to watch.
No one's there on scholarship anymore, right? Everyone's there as men fighting for a livelihood or potential. If in some cases you really hit in the NBA, man, you're talking multi-generational wealth. That's a big nut to scrap over. How you're going to split that particular plum. It brings out the best in guys, and I agree with you. It's going to be fun to see kind of how it plays out. Carl jumps in on Facebook. Appreciate you being with us live, Carl. And the question, what do you think are the minute distribution for each rotational player? Pat, we don't necessarily have all the time in the world to go through every potential rotational player, but the key guys, what's your answer for Carl? At least like ballpark for him.
It's so hard to say because we don't even know who's starting, but I think, Lennox probably going to get 20 minutes a game. Marketing, he's going to get probably 30 to 35. Kessler's looking at 30 to 35. And after that, I think, Clarkson, he's guaranteed because of what they paid him. You don't pay a guy that money unless he's penciled into
for sure
to get, starter type minutes. So I think Clarkson, whether he comes off the bench or whether he starts, he's going to be a 30-minute guy. And then after that, all bets are off. I think the next guy up that's, guaranteed to get rotational minutes probably would be Sexton, because I think Clarkson will probably start. Sexton will probably come off the bench. So, Sexton would be looking to get 25 minutes a game. I think he's looking at that. And then it's just a matter of, you got Dunn, you got Horton Tucker, you got Keyonte George, you got, Agbaji, you got Luca, trying to get minutes at the 3. It is so hard to say, well, who's going to, at this stage, it's so close, other than those top tier guys, it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at the pecking order as far as who's guaranteed minutes, Markkanen, Kessler, Collins, Clarkson, Sexton, and after Sexton, all bets are off.
Let's grab this one from Car Wash on YouTube. Appreciate you, Car Wash channel. Who do you want to trade for the Utah Jazz? Pat, and in this case, you should answer this, and you should answer it in a way that isn't necessarily bound by the strictures of that article you wrote a week or so back about plausible trade targets for the Jazz, maybe like genie in a bottle. If you got if the blue genie popped out and said, "Here, make a wish," who do you want to see land in Utah via trade? I mean, that's on the table that we know of, I guess. If there's a plausibility thread, that's what it would be. I
mean, man, it's hard to answer that question now because we don't know what's going to shake out at the one, the starting at the one position. But, if I were to pick a one, if I thought the Jazz were maybe one piece away from, competing, maybe Holiday from the Bucks, he'd be a good one. He plays defense, and I think that's really where the Jazz are lacking. If Horton Tucker or Keyonte George can lock down the one, I mentioned him last week. I like, DeJounte Murray at the 2. I think there's a chance that he could be available at some point if Atlanta, doesn't see really a path to really making some headwaves this year. They've got some salary cap issues that they need to resolve, and trading Murray would help that, contribute to that. But it is hard. I think the Jazz, as far as what player they're going to, target, it just depends on, how these players and how everything shakes out as far as, locking down certain positions. I do think it's safe to say, though, that when we do trade for a player, it's going to be someone in the backcourt or a wing. I think our front court is pretty much set for that championship window that we're looking at with Collins, Markkanen, and Kessler, and then you got Hendricks coming off the bench.
Planeta Jazz, awesome. Appreciate you being with us. Wants to know, do you think Danny Ainge wants to get the unprotected top 10 protected pick from 2024 we sent to the Thunder next season, I think is what is being asked.
Yeah, I think they want to. I do think they want to relinquish that pick to Oklahoma this year. I don't think, from what I'm reading, we're so far from it, but from what I'm reading, next year's draft class isn't very good. So if the Jazz can get out of the top 10 or the bottom 10, then get out of the bottom 10 and give that pick to Oklahoma City, I think that's a win for the Jazz. I don't think they want to pay off that debt for sure in a weak draft class.
Car Wash channel again saying I would trade Colin Sexton and Kelly Olynyk because they sat out during the playoffs and last of the games last season didn't play. Jazz didn't make the playoffs, but Olynyk, I'm trying to remember, did he really miss that much time down the stretch?
No, he played 68 games last year. He played.
Yeah.
They were sitting him at the end because, they were in full tank mode.
Sexton, how many straight did he miss, dude? You had this memorized. It was like.
Yeah, he only missed. I looked it up today because I wrote that article on him, and he played 68 games last year, so he only missed 14.
Right.
Seems like he missed a lot more, though. It does.
How many did Sexton miss straight?
Oh, geez. He missed, I think he missed every game except for one game after the All-Star break. I think it was 22 games, and he played 15 minutes. The weird thing about Sexton was he hurt his hamstring, and then it's the All-Star game, and it's less than a week since he hurt his hamstring. He's like playing in the skills challenge. He's
Right.
running up and down the court in the skills challenge. And then he sits the whole year. I'm just like, oh yeah, they're tanking.
Tank. Now we know why. You get the three guys. And we still haven't talked about in the first round. We still haven't talked about Bryce Sensabaugh. So Car Wash, just finishing this off real quick. They both got hurt talking about Sexton. I don't remember Olynyk really being banged up, but he wants the trade for Luca Doncic. And then Planeta Jazz again. It's going to be funny to see the team next season. We don't have, but fun because we don't have a pure point guard. It's one of those, this is a topic that has been hammered hard by the Frozen Rope this offseason, which is, speculating on what's going to happen at the one, considering the horses that the Jazz have right now in the hunt for that. You got to kind of think that it favors the guy who can actually bring a defensive presence to the court because, the Jazz would be okay if, take Chris Dunn out of the picture for a minute, swap him with whoever you want besides Chris Dunn at the one. Mm-hmm. They'd be okay in a fighting fire versus fire scenario. But when they encounter an opponent who can not only fight fire with fire offensively, but then actually shut their guy down on defense, all of a sudden you're grossly outmatched and you got to have answers for that. So it will be fun to see what happens because, as he says, Planeta, there's no John Stockton, a pure point guard, right, on this roster.
There's not. And, a lot of teams are going that route, though. Like, as far as, like, the Chris Paul type point guard, I mean, how many of them are really out there, to begin with? But Dunn is the closest that we got as a point guard. And, he's going to – I think he gives us our best chance as far as what he brings to the table today. Mm-hmm. As far as what we saw last year. We don't know. Maybe Horton Tucker spent the whole off season in the gym and he can hit, 33, 34% of his threes. And, that changes everything. Mm-hmm. But from what we saw last year, I don't think there's any question that Dunn gives the Jazz their best chance to win because, man, those other guards, they don't put up a lot of resistance as far as what they offer defensively. And I don't know if people remember pre-All-Star break when Conley, Clarkson, and Sexton were getting the lion's share of Beasley. Beasley was a part of that too. Yeah, and they were getting the lion's share of the minutes of the guard. Man, it was a joke.
Hot knife through butter.
Yeah, I mean, the other teams were just scoring at will.
But here's the thing, though, too, and then we'll grab Shannon, and then we're about out of time. But, THT, if he would buckle down on that aspect of his game, mm-hmm. Dude, that guy's freaking built like a tank. We've already talked about the wingspan, 7'1". We've already talked about his weight and relative size, and of course his age. He's still a young guy. If he could really hunker down and care enough, because that's a big thing about the guys who play defense in this league is they care about it. They make it a point. It's a priority to them. And if he could add that feather in his cap, dude, like he could be like a unique freak. And I say that in the complimentary sense when we talk about, oh man, that guy's a freak. He could be that guy if he could become a fully complete player.
Yeah, if he gets to 35% 3-point shooter, then it's a done deal. Like the debate of who's starting at the point guard's over. But it's like what's his fourth, fifth year, and he's been a pretty consistent 28% shooter. Yeah. So I don't know if it's going to change, but man, that guy is a beast when he gets going downhill. Like you can't stop him. Nobody can stop him.
It's like a tight end suddenly playing. Yeah. Playing basketball. It's like contact sport. You kidding me? Yeah. Let me show you what that means.
Yeah.
All right. Let's grab this last one. We'll grab this one in car wash and kind of keep it rapid fire on our response here. But Shannon, appreciate the comment. You may have talked about this. If so, just say, and I'll go back. But what would it take for Keyonte George to get reliable minutes, and when would you see that happening? So short and sweet, Pat. We did kind of touch on this earlier, but Cliff Notes version of the answer. How does George get some reliable minutes and when?
Well, you go back to the Donovan Mitchell. It took him till game 12. It took him of just showing everybody that, where they forced Utah's hand to start playing him full-time minutes took him till game 12. So, I think Keyonte George, in order for him to force his hand into this group, because they're so deep at that position and these guys that he's competing with already have a track record, he's just going to have to be better than them. in practice and in the games, and it's just going to come down to a point to where it's just obvious. And that's what I'm not sure is going to, I'm not so sold on that, even though he looked good in the summer league. Like, I'm not sure what he offers defensively, being 185 pounds and this being his first year in the league. And remember, when he's starting, he's guarding Kyrie Irving, he's guarding Luca, of Dame Lillard's, in Portland, if he starts the year, he's guarding Dame Lillard if he's starting. Yeah. And that's the one thing about these rookies. If they start, they're guarding the other team's best players. And will, so maybe you can. I don't know. We'll see. But we'll see how it plays out.
I mean, keep in mind, even though kind of the maybe best case scenario is the Donovan model from 2017 for Keyonte, but Donovan was an exception that proves the rule when it comes to, cannot be denied guy out of the gates. Who's not like a top 3, 4, 5 pick. Let's grab this one real quick, and then we'll dip on out of here. We're out of time, guys. Car Wash says, I heard Utah is going to try to get Luca because I heard Luca wants out of Dallas. Utah keeps eyeing him. So this is a rumor, Pat, that has persisted since basically the end of the 2022-23 season. I haven't seen anything really worth sinking our teeth into lately. This is kind of like the last thing I can remember us really seeing on this was about a month, maybe like late June. But what's kind of pass on what you've heard about Luca? Does he really want out of Dallas? Because the Jazz have been linked to him in terms of if he does force his way out, the Jazz have been linked. Doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean it's real. That's not always the case, Pat, that where there's smoke, there's fire. But there have been different insiders who have linked the Jazz to being, hey, we're here for Luca if he does actually get Dallas to acquiesce to a trade.
Yeah, I mean, Luca hasn't personally said he wants out of Dallas. He just says he wants to be on. I think he made a comment that he wants to be on a winner, and maybe maybe it got taken out of context. I don't think he was saying he directly wants out of there, but yeah, I mean, Luca's a player. Obviously, every team would want. Keep in mind, I mentioned this last week, Luca comes with a price. You're not going to get Luca without giving up Markkanen and Kessler. Like, there's no way. Like, if you're the Jazz fan that wants Luca, you got to be willing to give up Kessler and Markkanen and more. You probably would take Kessler, Markkanen, one of our 3 first-round picks this year, either Keyonte George, Hendricks, or Sensabaugh. You're talking probably 3 players right there, and then a ton of draft picks. You're probably talking about five first rounders, and that might get him, because you got to remember, someone like Luca, it's not like Lillard where you got that massive contract and you got maybe 1 or 2 deals, like 2 teams trying to trump each other. Luca comes available, there's going to be like 12 teams trying to trump everybody's offer. The offer is going to get so big. So unless you're prepared to give up a lot, I don't know. I don't know if Luca's, I think we would just have to give up too much. And keep in mind this, like, let's say we had to give up those players to get Luca, and this is just a scenario that probably will never happen, but let's say we did, okay? Then Luca's in a situation where how much talent does he have around him in Utah? And then he wants out of Utah. He's like in the same place.
It's a cycle.
So yeah, it's just a cycle. So I don't know. Like, you're not getting Luca without giving up Kessler, Markkanen, and more than that. So if he ever did become available, it would be because Dallas just free-falled, and he would have to have a falling out with management, and the writing would have to be on the wall that he's going to walk, that he's going to not re-sign with Dallas. So we're probably a couple years removed from something like that happening. But
and just be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But guys, great conversation. We appreciate you being with us. Reminder, I mean, tonight, I got to say, Pat, was probably our liveliest conversation with the chat, which is what we want to see. Keep it coming, guys. We love it. That's why we do this as a live show, is we don't want this to be a podcast where we're going live and it's just 2 guys talking, completely ignoring the community and the chat and the Jazz fans. That we want you to sound off. So appreciate you doing it tonight. And don't forget, every Tuesday, 5 p.m., we're going live here on the Frozen Rope, both on YouTube, our Facebook, and Twitter. So look forward to that. In the meantime, so we'll be back in a week's time. In the meantime, you can follow my partner here, Pat Byrnes, on Twitter to keep the conversation going at PBurnsNBA. You can connect with me at Chad and Jensen. Make sure you're following the Frozen Rope on all our different social channels. If you're a YouTube viewer, make sure you're following on Facebook and Twitter and vice versa. So, Pat, great conversation, brother. Can't wait to do it again in a week's time, and it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And I was going to say too, to kind of piggyback off your comment.
Yeah.
Man, if people like have anything like they don't believe what we're saying or they want to debate what we're saying, I'd love to hear their opinions. Like there's so much to debate about right now with Jazz basketball, who should play and who shouldn't play and who we should trade for. And like, man, I'd love to hear like your opinions and, you know, your takes. And yeah, I mean, sports wouldn't be fun without debate. So yeah, I would love to hear your comments.
Well said. And it's not like the old days. I mean, think about it. Back before the internet really kind of the efficiency side of the internet, and people became realized what was possible with podcasts and stuff. I mean, back in the day, you could tune into your favorite radio hosts, whether it's local or national guys. You're not sounding off. I mean, they might check their text line once every 3-hour show, but best case scenario, you're getting like a call in opportunity on Friday. But that's if you're lucky enough to like elbow out everyone else who's also calling in on that Friday. So with the live thing with podcasts, that's why it's so much more fun, guys. Like, again, I've done it both ways for many, many years. You know, getting together with your podcast host, Pat, and just talking about, here's our topics we're going to talk about today. We talk about it, we hit record, we talk about it, then we upload it to an RSS feed and go about our business and hope people listen to it or whatever. That's fun. It's okay for us as hosts and podcasters, but it's nothing compared to actually having conversations, not just with each other, but with you guys live. So appreciate each and every one of you tonight. We'll see you back here in a week. Keep it with the Frozen Rope, because any little morsel nugget on your Utah Jazz, you know, we're breaking it down from across the internet. So for Patrick Byrnes, I'm Chad Jensen. We will talk to you next Tuesday, 5 p.m. Mountain Time, baby.